Welcome back, folks, to another session in our Old Testament series of the book of Zechariah. We've entitled this series, Return to the Lord. We have been looking at the 8-night visions that the prophet Zechariah had on the 24th day of the 11th month in the second year of the reign of the Persian king Darius I. We want to keep in mind the context as we study of the first remnant of Jewish exiles who returned from Babylon to rebuild the second temple, as well as the prophecies of a glorious future when Messiah will return, redeem, and rescue Israel and reign on earth from the city of the great king, Jerusalem. In this study, we want to look at the seventh vision, Zechariah 5, verse 5 to 11. Let's just read those verses together. Zechariah 5, verse 5 to 11, we read, "Then the angel who was speaking with me went out and said to me, 'Lift up now your eyes and see what this is going forth.' I said, 'What is it?' And he said, 'This is the ephah going forth.' Again he said, 'This is their appearance in all the land.' And behold, a lead cover was lifted up. And this is a woman sitting inside the ephah. Then he said, 'This is wickedness.' And he threw her down into the middle of the ephah and cast the lead weight on its opening. Then I lifted up my eyes and looked, and there 2 women were coming out with the wind in their wings, and they had wings like the wings of a stork. And they lifted up the ephah between the earth and the heavens. I said to the angel who was speaking with me, 'Where are they taking the ephah?' Then he said to me, 'To build a temple for her in the land of Shinar. And when it is prepared, she will be set there on her own pedestal.'" Now in Zechariah 5, verse 5, we see the interpreting angel once again returning to Zechariah. It seems here that he returned from the hosts of angels. Notice the phrase here in verse 5. "Then the angel who was speaking with me went out." That little phrase, went out. Where did he go out from? It seems that he went out from the hosts of the angels. Zechariah is instructed once again to lift up now his eyes and see what is going forth. The phrase "going forth" is also mentioned in verse 6 of this chapter as well, where it says, "I said, 'What is it?' And he said, 'This is the ephah going forth.'" What is the ephah? Well, the ephah is a large measurement, a basket, a container. Again, the angel speaks, saying, "This is their appearance in all the land." Literally, their eyes. This is their eyes in all the land. This is what they look like throughout the land, referring to the land of Judah and Israel. To show their appearance in verse 7, we see in this vision a talent of lead, or a circular mass, is lifted off the mouth of the ephah. And in verse 8, it is referred to as a lead weight. The talent of lead, or circular mass, was the largest measure of quantity and was used in commercial transactions for weighing out money. The cover is lifted, and we see a woman sitting inside. She is identified as wickedness. So this is the symbol of the seventh vision, an ephah, or a measurement, with a woman sitting inside, identified as wickedness, and contained in the basket with a lead weight or covering on the opening. Now, lots of questions come flooding in at this point and will increase as we also look at the final three verses, verses 9 to 11. This vision relates both to the historical setting and a future prophetic period. Let's begin by defining the word wickedness. Zechariah is told that the woman in the ephah is wickedness. The Hebrew word is risha, literally moral wrong or guilt or fault. Now we see here the ephah, or the measurement, and lead weight, a circular mass used in commercial transactions for weighing out money, with the woman or wickedness contained in the ephah. Now this seems to point to a wicked commercial enterprise that many fell into after the Babylonian captivity, that has taken root in the nations of the world. Consider even today what we are seeing these days with the wicked elite of this world and what they're attempting to do. And this commercial enterprise, this wicked commercial enterprise, will envelop the final days of the one world government. If we read in Revelation chapter 18, verses 3, first of all, for all the nations have drunk of the wine of the passion of her immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed acts of immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth, notice the word merchants of the earth, have become rich by the wealth of her sensuality. And then verse 11 to 14, and the merchants of the earth weep and mourn over her because no one buys their cargoes anymore, cargoes of gold and silver and precious stones and pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and every kind of citron wood and every article of ivory and every article made from very costly wood and bronze and iron and marble, in verse 13, and cinnamon and spice and incense and perfume and frankincense and wine and olive oil and fine flour and wheat and cattle and sheep and cargoes of horses and chariots and slaves and human lives. This is referring to this wicked world government referred to and described as Babylon in Revelation, and this wicked commercial enterprise. Compare this to the previous vision where we saw the flying scroll with the two sins written on each side of it, the sin of perjury and the sin of swearing falsely or false oaths that are made by the name of the Lord. This wicked commercial enterprise that has taken place throughout the history of this world and will culminate in the final days. The ephah, or measurement, with a lead weight uncovered and covering the opening, points us to the sovereignty of God over wickedness. God only permits so much to operate for so long. Wickedness, though so evil beyond our wildest imaginations, is not running unchecked and unaccountable. God is sovereignly in control of all things, and he will judge it. The woman in the ephah, or wickedness, struggled to get out but was thrown down and the lead weight cast on the opening. Historically, evil and wickedness had been running throughout the land of Judah, Israel, resulting in the Babylonian captivity. This vision, among other things, like the previous vision of the flying scroll, was a warning to the remnant that had returned to rebuild the second temple. And it should be a warning to us today. Be wary, be careful of wickedness. Now, a big question here would be, why a woman? Why is a woman used to symbolize wickedness? There are a couple of answers here. First of all, grammatical. Some things are identified in various forms. For example, we might refer to something as it, or something as she, or something as he. Now, the word for wickedness in verse 8 of chapter 5 is a feminine noun. Secondly, the metaphor. Here we have a metaphor of an adulterous woman. That's often used in the Old Testament to illustrate unfaithfulness. For example, in Proverbs 5, verse 7, we see the strong warning for men to be wary of the adulterous woman. Also, Israel is often chastised for her spiritual adultery. We look at the prophet Hosea and the prophet Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 38 to 40. The scriptures warn us of the seduction of wickedness. And thirdly, the harmony with related prophecy. Now, earlier we read from Revelation 18, but we see in Revelation 17, verse 1 to 5, and let's read it. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and spoke with me, saying, "Come here, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot, who sits on many waters," and waters referring to nations, "with whom the kings of the earth committed acts of immorality, and those who dwell on the earth were made drunk with the wine of her immorality. And he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast full of blasphemous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a gold cup full of abominations and of the unclean things of her immorality. And on her forehead a name was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth." Now in chapter 5 of Zechariah, verse 9 to 11, we continue to see. Let's read that. "Then I lifted up my eyes," that's Zechariah lifted up his eyes and looked, "and there 2 women were coming out with the wind in their wings, and they had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the ephah between the earth and the heavens. I said to the angel who was speaking with me, 'Where are they taking the ephah?' Then he said to me, 'To build a temple for her in the land of Shinar, and when it is prepared, she will be set there on her own pedestal.'" Zechariah saw 2 women flying to the ephah with the wings of a stork. A stork is an unclean bird in the law, ceremonially unclean. It seems that these could be 2 evil spirits which lift up the ephah and fly off with it. This would be in keeping with the woman called wickedness that's in the ephah. In answer to Zechariah's question, verse 10, "Where are they taking the ephah?" the interpreting angel says to build a temple for her, a temple of wickedness in the land of Shinar. And she will sit there on her own pedestal or base. Now, what does this mean? Shinar was in Mesopotamia, where ancient Babylon was. It seems that the message here is not focused so much on the geographical place, but rather on an event which happened in that place. Genesis 11, we have the account of the Tower of Babel. Genesis 11, verse 1 to 9. And we see how God wanted man to scatter and be fruitful and fill the earth, but they insisted on staying here, and they built a ziggurat, a tower of defiance. The Tower of Babel was an act of rebellion against God and an attempt to form a one-world government. This has been an ongoing attempt of wickedness from the rebellion of Lucifer when he fell, and since the fall of man in the garden. And it will be recognized in the final days, but only for a short while. God will judge all wickedness and remove it. In Zechariah chapter 5, verse 11, we see a temple built for wickedness, the woman in the ephah. This is a pagan temple spoken of here. Think of all the pagan temples throughout history, not only in Babylon, but throughout the history of this world. I can remember going to the Israel Museum in Jerusalem a couple of years ago and seeing an area that recorded the, quote, gods of the nations, the gods of the ancient world. This refers to the height of wickedness as it seeks to defy the one true God, the one true God who has said, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." This directs us to the man of lawlessness, the false prophet, and the one world religion and government. They will have the stage for a short while. Revelation 17 tells us in verse 11 to 12, "The beast which was and is not is himself also an eighth, and is one of the seven, and he goes to destruction. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they receive authority as kings with the beast." And then it says, "for 1 hour. These have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast." Now, this isn't meaning 1 hour of 60 minutes, but for a short time, a designated time given by God. But God alone is God, and he will not share his glory with another, as we read in Isaiah 42, verse 8. In conclusion, we see some important things. There's some important applications. First of all, we live in a very sinful world. Wickedness surrounds us on every hand. Jeremiah 17, verse 9 tells us that the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked. The world system, headed by Satan, is a wicked system. Satan is a wicked taskmaster. And man without God is blind to this and follows this wicked road into deeper and deeper expressions of wickedness, and finally to judgment. Secondly, wickedness is very seductive, and mankind falls for the lure of wickedness day by day. Believers so often slip into the traps and snares of wickedness that Satan sets for them. It's important daily that we get a fresh glimpse of the holiness of God, and with that will come deeper understanding of how wicked wickedness is. Thirdly, the only answer to this is the power of the cross. Jesus died for us on the cross. He did battle with Satan and with sin, and he defeated sin and wickedness at the cross. In 1 John chapter 3, verse 8, we read these words, "The one who practices sin is of the devil, for the devil has sinned from the beginning." And then it says, "The Son of God appeared for this purpose, to destroy the works of the devil." My friend, the first thing that we must do, if we have not done this, is come to the cross, come to Jesus in simple faith, and put our total trust in him and in his substitutional and sacrificial work for us, simply by faith in Christ alone. It's not plus anything else, but Christ plus nothing, Christ alone. And this work of Jesus Christ sets the believer absolutely free. They are born again into newness of life. But then we need to live each day in the power of that cross, in the victory of that cross, in the power of God's indwelling Spirit, to understand and to know what God has done, to give ourselves fully to the Lord, to reckon that we have died to sin and are alive to God, to walk in his power. Walk in the Spirit, and you will not fulfill the lusts of the flesh.